So before I start, I would like to thank the Center for the Art of East Asia and organizers and moderators for giving me a chance to think about exhibitions, not instead of images from a different perspective of thinking about art. So today I'm going to talk about two contemporary art exhibitions that took place in the United States in a different context. In 2009, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, which is located in the heart of the city with the highest Korean American populations, opened an exhibition with an interesting title, Your Bright Future, 12 Contemporary Artists from Korea, taken from one of the works at the exhibition by Korean artist Lee So Park. In the work, 10 bright lights with reflectors that are connected by a wooden structure face upwards and shine up a large white wall, which represents the future that has not arrived yet. The future, which is supposedly brighter than the present, however, is empty of any signifiers, making one wonder how the future would be bright. The irony that the work carries suggests issues around the exhibition, and furthermore, contemporary art exhibitions from Korean, East Asian, or non-Western cultures in the West. In the era of globalization, why does the exhibition speak of the future, not the past or the present? How have nation-based exhibitions been envisioned after identity politics and multiculturalism that swept contemporary art? In this presentation, I will discuss two landmark exhibitions of contemporary Korean art in the United States that exemplify the changing discourses of contemporary art, which is Across the Pacific, Contemporary Korean Art and Korean American Art at Queens Museum, New York in 1993, and Your Bright Future, 12 Contemporary Artists from Korea that opened at Los Angeles County Museum of Art in 2009 and traveled to the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston in the same year. From the boundaries of Korean art to what constitute contemporary art, the exhibitions not only reflect how the art of the other has been framed and positioned in American context, but also the changing discourse of contemporary art from identity politics to post-identity. By analyzing the exhibitions, I'd like to open up questions and discussion about positioning of contemporary Korean art in the Western context. The early 1990s was a transitional period in both Korea and the United States in various aspects. In Korea, almost 30 years of military dictatorship ended, and Korean society went through a fundamental changes into democracy. Along with the political system in the Cold War context, the Korean government adopted globalization as an official policy and vigorously pursued it to make Korea a world-class advanced nation. Not only did more and more people study, work, and lived abroad, which resulted in the diaspora of Korean artists, but also government-sponsored cultural project and the improved infrastructure contributed Korea to crafting a global identity. For instance, under the lead of the Korean government, the Whitney Biennial traveled to Korea in 1993 to open at the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art and introduced cutting-edge discourses such as identity, politics, and post-colonialism that were unfamiliar to Korean audiences. Upon increased exposure to other cultures, Koreans achieved enhanced cultural consciousness and began to compare us and them, and artists increasingly addressed the issue of identity in their works. The increased migration and the changed perception of Korean identity dovetailed with the rise of identity politics and multiculturalism in American society in which such events as the 1991 Anita Hill Thomas hearing, the 1992 Los Angeles riots, and the 1994 O.J. Simpson murders and trials brought the issues of differences of race and gender to the fore. In the art world, debates about multiculturalism centered in New York art scene and academic circles as a series of events were stimulating debates on political art at the time. For instance, the 1990 exhibition, The Decade Show, framed works of identity in the 1980s at the Studio Museum in Harlem, the Museum of Contemporary Hispanic Art, and the Museum of Contemporary Art in New York surveyed political tendencies in the art of the 1980s with an emphasis on multicultural interest in the art world and critical analysis of essentialist notion of identity. The publications, essentially speaking, Feminism, Nature, and Difference, and Out There, Marginalization and Contemporary Cultures, on the other hand, problematized the distinction between essentialism and constructionism and the heteronormative Western hegemony, covering expansive cultural forms from high art to street culture in the process. Most of all, it was the 1993 Whitney Biennial at the Whitney Museum of American Art that best exemplified the representation of socio-political issues in contemporary art, solidifying identity politics and multiculturalism. Highlighting that art production springs out from a relation of cultures and identities and addressing problems of identity and the presentation of community, the 1993 biennial encompassed social context and explored multiple aspects of identity that come to play in the works of art. With a great number of women artists and artists of color whose work were formerly excluded from mainstream art venues, it explored multiple aspects of identity beyond the essentialism of the 1970s that could expand to consider a representation of minority ethnicities in the multicultural American society. Against this backdrop of the broadening scope of United States institutions and academia, the exhibition across the Pacific brought together two groups of artists from Korean ethnicity, Korean and Korean American and Canadian for the first time, to explore the social and political realities on the formation of Korean and Korean American identities. The exhibition consisted of three sections: that of Korean American artists, and that of film and video. The three curators organized respectively. Each curator enacted different concepts of Korean identity with artworks that manifested concrete social, political, historical, and cultural realities that affected the formation of their artistic subjectivities. In this way, the exhibition provided the intersectionality of Korean identity that spoke to the states of race, ethnicity, gender, and sexuality, the identification of which often involves more than one element simultaneously. For instance, as Jane Faber curated the section on Korean American art, the part focused on issues of migration, race, language, and cultural heritage converged to shape Korean American identities. Sung Ho Che's 1993 installation, Che's Market, a replica of burnt out produce store, reminds one of the Los Angeles riots and the so-called Red Apple incident in New York as the conflation of Korean American and African American conflicts. While the work addresses racial tension that prevailed in American society at the time, it also included a photograph of Che's own family in the window, which is set against the white background that partially reads America. As it is juxtaposed with an awning inscribed with Che's Market, the personal narrative of the work expands to immigrant life and the American dream of Korean Americans. In Ritual Labor Over Mechanical Bride by Young Soon Min, Korean identity is entangled with the issue of gender as well as race and ethnicity. The lifelike replica of traditional Korean bride stands on the carpet that is inscribed with the phrases, "Welcome, please walk step by step all over me. Now, as always, I am your humble and obedient servant, your comfort girl, your faithful daughter." When the viewer steps on the carpet, the figure bows and an audio tape voice whispers, "Where is my demilitarized desire? Where is my decolonized body politic?" The traditional Korean bridal dress, combined with these words, suggests a submissive role that Korean women had been forced to take. Furthermore, the bride also stands for the subjugated nation in colonial history and is a commentary on the Western male gaze that exoticizes and objectifies Asian women. While the Korean American part explored the complexity of what constitute Korean American identities, the Korean portion was based on the Korean identity as a collective notion that represents the nation or the ethnic group of Koreans. According to the curator of the section, Young-Chul Lee, contemporary Korean art has long been a silent other that merely emulated Western art. In the face of multiculturalism that opened its door to the art of Asia, Lee was interested in exposing the hierarchical relationship between the center and the periphery that was still in effect, and declaring the distinctive identity of Korean culture to dismantle the dominant structure of Western culture. Accordingly, the part consisted largely of Minjung art, an activist art that emerged in the 1980s against military dictatorship, and a realism movement that allegedly integrated the aesthetic and the non-aesthetic, the traditional and the contemporary, and aesthetics and politics. For instance, Bultong Park's photo collage addresses neo-colonial relationship of South Korea to the United States with the influx of capitalism and military power. Woo Seok Kim adopted traditional Korean painting techniques and symbols of Buddhist art, which are four eyes that symbolize a transcendental power that can see through the world. As the title, Across the Pacific, suggests, the exhibition not only introduced Korean and Korean American art that spanned two continents to the Western audiences, but also participated in the discourse and practice of contemporary art that was decentering from the predominant culture of the mythically constructed straight white male. It complicated the category of contemporary Korean art and also presented the intersectionality of Korean identity, rejecting the simplified notion of the other and claiming its own subjectivities. This way, Across the Pacific suggested a path for exhibiting contemporary Korean art in the American context and pushed the boundaries of contemporary art. This presentation actually stems from the questions that I had about this 2009 exhibition. What does it mean to have exhibitions based on nation states in the 21st century? What does the exhibition show about Korean art after the era of identity politics and multiculturalism? How did the globalization of contemporary art and the supposed decentering of the artwork change or affect the way Korean art is exhibited abroad? What is noticeable about the exhibition is the way it eschewed the categorization of Korean art, but emphasized the show as a collection of individual contemporary artists from Korea who share nothing but their Korean origin. As Mi-won Kwon wrote, without a viable organizing principle for the show, curators purposely undermined the implication of nation-defining art in response to the widespread assumption that national identity is an outdated category. What is prioritized instead is the artist's global identity. For instance, as the exhibition catalog highlighted their international education and itinerant lifestyle and their perception of Korea rather as a community, the shared experience and memories of which touch upon such universal issues of globalization, diaspora, and the ramification of rapid economic development and urbanization, than a nation that supposedly obscure the individuality of artists and artworks. With the exception of Do Ho-seo, whose sculptures, who are the most traditional medium of the exhibition, that depicted the collision between two buildings, which implies the cultural clashes and the uprooted experience that the artist underwent. The exhibited works did not carry obvious signifiers of Korean culture and identity. For instance, in a video installation, A Needlewoman, Kim Soo-ja is seen standing immobile with her back to the screen, while urban crowds in cosmopolitan cities such as Havana and Jerusalem slowly pass by or react to her. Her nomadic female body functions as a symbolic needle that threads in and out of the fabric of humanity, transcending the distinction between the self and the other. Hae Kyu-yang's storage piece consists of created and wrapped works that were unsold. The conceptual installation that addresses artists' problems of having the accumulation of work is a commentary on the status of artworks as a commodity in the gallery system. As this work demonstrates, the exhibition is hesitant to make a direct connection to Korea with such issues as the socio-political history of Korea, cultural heritage, and Asian identity that involves differences of race, ethnicity, class, and gender. In a familiar vein, as the title of the exhibition suggests, without the burden of the past, which is represented with traditional genres of Korean art, that sought to mediate the past and the present of Korean art. With few exceptions, site-specific installations, video, and computer animation declared the contemporaneity of the exhibition and spoke of the future of contemporary art by artists from Korea. The rejection of the coalitional idea of Korean identity in the exhibition reveals a paradox of the discourse of post-identity, which emerged as a reaction to debates about multiculturalism and identity in contemporary art when they become institutionalized. According to some critics, identity politics and multiculturalism recognize non-Western artists as representatives of the ethnic community and local culture, produce more sophisticated forms of exclusion, and eventually recenter the West as the privileged subject of knowledge. Amelia Jones elaborated on this issue with exhibitions that claim as post-feminism or post-Black. For instance, Freestyle, a 2001 exhibition at the Studio Museum Harlem in New York by Thelma Gordon, one of the curators of the 1993 Whitney Biennial, pivoted up around Blackness, therefore continued to follow the rhetoric of identity politics while claiming to be beyond consideration of identity at the same time. Similarly, Your Bright Future disavowed Koreanness and made an apolitical shift away from explicit identity politics, but still asserted the artist's Korean descent as central and integrated Korean experience of globalization and diaspora. While the rejection of the politics of identification, in which such effects as race, class, ethnicity, gender, nationality, and sexuality intersect, is a resistance to the essentialization of Korean art with the otherness. As Youngmin Moon argues, it serves the mainstream's desire to ignore difference to sustain homogeneity under the approval of their own notion of universality. As one of the three curators from Korea, Sun Jung-kim remarked that international exhibitions that introduce Korean art should attract the local audience by making them emphasize with the exhibition and the works, rather than presenting what we want to show the world. The exhibition conformed to the rhetoric of global contemporary art, rather than challenging the existing norms. Eventually, it contributed to the dominant discourse of reducing modern and contemporary Korean art as two derivatives of its Western counterparts. In between the tension of the label Korean artist and the open-ended idea of identification, as Iso Bak's work suggests, the bright future of contemporary Korean art has not to be envisioned. While the 1990s opened up space for contemporary Asian art, the persistence of hegemonic Westernism has continuously encouraged us to imagine constructive alternatives to present Asian identity and present contemporary Korean art in a global context with a full agency. When the pandemic has raised issues of race, including anti-Asian racism, to destabilize the lives of Asian and Asian Americans, how would it affect the way artistic productions of the groups are framed and presented? Though I do not have definite answers to the question, I hope this presentation raised some critical questions about the issue. Thank you.